Welcome back. You're watching World Talks, and I'm your host, Klaudia Czerwińska. As I mentioned yesterday, Poland's Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski said that the government has prepared for all contingencies in the U.S. election. Now that the election was won by Donald J. Trump, that preparation might come in handy. The question now is, what does this presidency mean for Poland? To try and tackle that question, I'm joined by Andrzej Dąbrowski, an analyst at the Polish Institute of International Affairs. Thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Happy to be here.
A lot has happened. How important do you think it is for Poland to maintain a good relationship with the new president and the new government in the United States?
Well, it's obviously fundamental. Poland's been a very loyal and effective ally of the United States and of the whole NATO alliance for over 25 years. And being in this part of Europe, being a neighbor of an aggressive and very openly revisionist states such as Russia, being an ally, being a host nation to US troops, creating this synergy of our political, military and economic cooperation is utmost important for every Polish government, and has been seen since we joined NATO back in the late 90s. And I don't really believe that any kind of US president, never mind his name and surname, would change that. That is simply in the Polish most important
It's not
interest.
about the name, it's about the policies.
Obviously, it's about the policies, but then again, as for Poland, the previous Donald Trump administration's policies worked in hand. He was against the Nord Stream 2. He was very adamant in making the NATO alliance stronger. He was pushing Western European allies towards achieving the 2% GDP goal for their military spending, and he was about it all the time during his 4 years in office. And I don't believe that this might change anyway. His policies towards Ukraine are obviously something troubling, but then again, there's this whole administration. There are officials that are going to work day and night on preparing a plan for his political goals to be achieved. And I believe Poland might be a very useful partner in creating those plans. We have the best insight on what is happening on the eastern flank of NATO. Mm-hmm. We have awesome insight on Ukraine inner workings, on what is happening in Kiev, on what's happening in the front line. So being that NATO partner here, a frontline state, will be able to help not only the US, but also NATO if it comes to some sort of engagement of the North Atlantic Treaty in this peace process.
Well, considering, as you mentioned, that Poland is spending over 4% of its GDP, and we heard during the electoral campaign, we heard Donald Trump mention that he has no objections against Poland's conduct when it comes to defense spending in the NATO alliance. Do you think that Poland's voice is going to be the voice that is going to really mean something, not only because of the geopolitical placement of Poland in Europe in relation to the ongoing war in Ukraine and the tensions in Belarus and on the Polish-Belarusian border, but also in terms of the spending and what's been happening in Poland in terms of support for Ukraine?
So, in my opinion, as far as I remember what Donald Trump was like when he was president back in the day, he's a sort of man, and his policies kind of reflect that. That when he sees someone is acting in good faith and according to what he believes is right, he will be, in a way, let's call it, rewarded for that. So if one might assume that the political relations between Donald Trump, his administration, and, for example, maybe Germany or other states in Europe which do not follow the 2% rule and do not keep up with the eastern flank, in terms of spending, in terms of preparing NATO for a possible engagement with any foe or enemy, Poland should remain on its course of spending as much as possible, preparing for any kind of contingency, and this will be seen very visibly in DC, which doesn't mean we shouldn't be able to, at any given time, be there, remind our partners on both sides of the aisle that Poland is very keen on delivering as a very good NATO ally, but also as a security provider, which we actually became. And
pardon me, but it takes me to my next point, which is we heard from Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, who said that both Poland and Europe have to be more self-reliant, considering the current presidency and the fact that Donald Trump might actually want to pull some of the resources, not only from Ukraine, but from NATO. What's your opinion on that?
Well, it seems that Donald Trump's point of view is something which the European leaders should take under consideration. And being prepared, being self-reliant, doesn't mean it excludes the issue of buying new equipment, of creating our militaries anew, of preparing more soldiers, more troops, preparing the resilience of the societies for contingencies such as war or conflict.
Perhaps that's one way to tackle
together.
it. Perhaps that's the way to actually get Donald Trump interested, because money spending is involved.
Yeah, money spending is very important for Donald Trump, and he sees Poland as one of those states that is very interested in US equipment. We've been doing that for several years now, purchasing tanks, purchasing airplanes, purchasing anti-aircraft missiles and systems. We're very focused on having that best kind of equipment which comes from from the United States. But unfortunately, when the US military-industrial complex is unable to deliver as fast as we are purchasing, we have to look elsewhere, sometimes in Korea, sometimes in Europe. And also that is something which the new administration will have to notice, that if they step up, they're going to have a better kind of business relationship with not only Poland, but also all the states on the NATO eastern flank, such as the Baltic countries, Finland, etc.
Would you say, with everything that's been happening in Germany over the last 24 hours, that possibly for Donald Trump, Poland is going to be a sort of a stronghold that has that is a partner in a conversation because it has more political stability now?
Well, obviously, sort of situation that we're observing in Berlin, the crisis in the coalition is something that the transition team of Donald Trump is going to brief him on. And he will always be within this sort of frame of questioning, who do I call in Europe, paraphrasing late Henry Kissinger. And yeah, I believe that the stability of Poland, not only in terms of creating policies, but also providing this clear path ahead for other states in the region, being the leader of this conversation, how to make our security more resilient, how to be more prepared for anything that might happen, is something that will be looked upon in a very positive way in DC. And it's let's face it, this is something that we've been doing for many years now. And most elites in DC, where I travel and talk to people almost all the time, they say it clear. Poland is a big state, an important country for US interests in that region, and they will be continuing in this sort of looking at Poland as one of the most important partners. Don't worry about Germany. It's still a big economy. It's still a
I'm sure
major
Germany
player.
will be just fine.
I'm sure. They're still a big player, and they will still be on the map of any kind of administration in Washington in the near and further future.
So when it comes to Ukraine, obviously that's one of the subjects that is very dear to Polish authorities and to everyone in the region, hopefully. What tactics do you think Polish authorities, Polish government should use in those first weeks and months of the presidency, of Donald J. Trump's presidency, in order to convince him that he should be actually interested in what's happening and not pull the resources and, for example, invest them elsewhere, just like we spoke with Ms. Bonikowska just a second ago, taking the resources, taking the financial resources from Ukraine and possibly using them, for example, in the Middle East or the Indo-Pacific region. What kind of strategy the Polish government has to imply?
Well, obviously, the kind of strategy that would be very helpful in the first couple of weeks would be gaining this ability to talk to people who are in the very inner circle of Donald Trump's political interest. His advisors, people that are loyal to him. Polish institutions have been building those relationships for many years now, even since Donald Trump was in his very first weeks of the first term. So I believe that, you know, looking through your Rolodex and finding a couple of phone numbers will be easy. On the other hand, what you mentioned, like proposing some kind of engagement of bigger Polish presence in the Western Pacific or in the Middle East, that's something that should be discussed within NATO, something which should be discussed with all our partners, also in DC. But that is not a kind of move that is easy to be taken, and it's many months of preparations.
That's not something I was pointing at. I was talking about the U.S. possibly pulling the resources from Ukraine, their own resources, and putting them elsewhere. But that's definitely something very important to consider. And I suppose we live in interesting times, to say the least. So thank you so much for joining me, Andrzej Dąbrowski, an analyst at the Polish Institute of International Affairs. My pleasure. And so this would be all for now here on World Talks, but please stay tuned as we will be back in just a minute.